Dump. This is a very peculiar name for a kitten, but kittens often have peculiar names. Dump could not be called a beautiful kitten, but his good nature and playfulness made him attractive and likable. His mother must have thought him pretty, for she petted him so much by smoothing his fur with her tongue. I have not yet told you the color of this kitten, and I'm sure you are wondering about it. You might say he was very pretty. His fur was a bluish gray and white, and his face was white almost all over. He was just a common kitten, but you know the common kittens are smart and many times as good in disposition as the thoroughbreds. Dump was very playful and would do many cute things. One thing that he did and seemed to like most of all was playing hide and seek in the house. He would get behind the door and wait for his little mistress to come, and then he would jump out at her as though he meant to frighten her. Of course, she had jumped at him in the same way many times, and in this way had taught him the game of hide and seek. One afternoon in the summertime, the little girl thought of something to do which Dump had not thought. It was this. The girl had a nice little kodak which her uncle had given her, and she thought of taking Dump's picture. Not very many kittens are fortunate enough to have their pictures taken. The little kitten had never posed for a picture, and of course thought it was great fun, that is, if he thought of it at all. Anyway, they both went into the yard, and the little girl placed Dump on the gate-post. He seemed to know the purpose of being placed there, for he sat still in the warm sun, just like he was really posing for the picture. It was a good picture, too, and the girl has the little picture yet, although she is grown now and has a home of her own, and another kitten takes Dump's place. Dump always slept in the window during the summer between the screen and curtains. He would almost answer his little mistress with a little meow when she called him. He knew when it was time for his meals, as his master worked downtown in a meat shop, and when he would go to the house for his meals, Dump would meet him at the door and beg for meat. When the yard was mowed and the grass piled up in one big pile, the kitten would run to it and hide himself from his little mistress. This was great fun for both. They loved each other very much, and where one went around the yard or in the house, the other was to be found too. Dump never cared to play with other kittens and would not be very friendly. One of the neighbors had a big cat next door, but Dump would never let him come through the yard fence if he saw him. He must have been a little selfish, but probably it was because he loved his mistress more than other kittens. Many times Dump would go to the woodshed and watch for mice. He nearly always caught one, and he loved to play with it for hours at a time before eating it. One hot summer day he played too long, and it cost him his life, for he became overheated and died in just a little while. The little girl did everything she could for him, but could not save his life. Dump's little body was buried back of the cave beside the graves of two little bantam chickens and a little goldfish. End of Section 3. Mitch. Mitch was a beautiful Persian kitten and lived in Kansas City, Missouri. City kittens do not have such large playgrounds as kittens on the farm, for many times they are kept in the house almost all the time. There are many dangers for kittens outside in big cities, too. Someone may steal them and take them away from their homes, or they may get run over by the cars and big trucks. A little girl whose name was Mitchell gave the kitten to the lady who told me this story. The family called him Mitchie for a while after the name Mitchell. Some of them thought that name too long, so they shortened it to Mitch, and that became the name of this beautiful Persian kitten. The mistress kept a large fruit basket on the dining table, and when there was no fruit in it, Mitch used it for a bed. He learned to run toward the table, and with one jump he would land right in the basket. Then he would curl up for a long nap and be perfectly satisfied for hours. He always liked to get into boxes, and when the dresser drawers were left open, he would get into them. It did not make much difference to Mitch just what it was, for he could feel contented in anything. One day, a member of the family brought something home in a paper sack, and, taking the articles out, laid the sack on the bed. In a few minutes, Mitch was curled up in the sack, fast asleep. The lady's husband worked at night, or about half the night, and when he came home about midnight, Mitch would always meet him at the head of the stairs, ready for a romp. He loved to play with the man's watch chain, but one day it was a costly play. The watch was left on the dresser with the chain hanging over the edge, and Mitch decided to romp with it a little while. Of course, he did not know the watch might fall and break. In some way he got his claws fastened in the chain and jerked the watch to the floor. Mitch did not mean to break the watch, but it cost about $7 to have it repaired. Mitch could not repair the broken watch, and he had no way of paying the debt except by love and affection for his master. Mitch was like Snooks in the other story. He liked water and liked to play in it. He was very careful about keeping clean and would go to the lavatory and put his feet in the water and then wash his face. One faucet in the bathtub leaked a little, and Mitch found that he could get a drink there. In some way, he learned that he could strike the faucet with his feet and turn on more water. One day, some member of the family had prepared a half tub of water for a bath, and about the same time, Mitch decided that he wanted a drink. He went over to the bathtub and, as usual, jumped right over into the tub, but this time he landed in all the water. You should have seen him scramble to get out, for he was terribly frightened. One day, the lady and her husband moved away from the city to a farm, and, of course, Mitch went along and became a country kitten. I am sure that he liked to be on the farm where he could get out into the big outdoors and catch lots of mice. About a year passed, and the family moved back to the city, but Mitch was left on the farm with the family who moved on the place. Evidently, he did not like his new friends, or else decided to go back to the city, for he disappeared one afternoon and has not been heard of since. If you should see Mitch anywhere, it would be kind of you to tell him that the fruit basket is on the table in the city waiting for him. His mistress, too, will be very glad to hear from him or have him return to his former home. End of Section 4.